Hello, everyone. Welcome to Catalog and Cocktails. It's your honest, no BS, non-salesy conversation about enterprise data management with tasty beverages in hand. I'm Tim Gasper, longtime data nerd product guy at Data.World, joined by Juan Sequeda. Hey, Juan.
And I just spilled a bunch of my margarita on top of my computer, but I think it's okay.
Party foul.
Anyways, actually, I think this is the first time that we've anybody's like spilt anything, right?
That's true. I don't have a memory of there being a moment in our podcast where somebody spilled.
Yeah, but okay, we're good. We're good.
It's a first.
All right, Wednesday, middle of the week, end of our day, and final season 9 of the podcast. How are you doing, Tim?
I'm doing excellent. Tomorrow is actually the last day of school for the kiddos, so I'm ready for summer. We're gonna hit it hard, and I'm ready for service now too. We just recently announced the news that Data.World is joining service now, so pretty interesting times.
So anybody who's wondering, yes, Tim and I will continue doing the podcast. We're season finale because it is our traditional time to take a little break.
Summer break.
We got summer. We got families. We got stuff we need to do. But yeah, we're excited to be back. But okay, Season 9. By the way, it's season 9 because I went back. Season 1 we actually was like the full year, and then we didn't, because it was a full year that we didn't have any guests, and then we started having guests and called that season the first seasons. But anyways, we had, looking through my list right here, we had 16 episodes. This is our 17th episodes. We did have several of Tim and Juan episodes because we were traveling and stuff. So I just want a huge shout out to all our guests this season. Call them out: Jordan Morrow, Lindsay Murphy, Olga Mayandish, Alexander Torrenegra, Winfried Etiel, Kristen and Mary Lou, Francis O'Rafferty, John George Perron, Patrick Cuba, Hala Nelson, Ugo Bone Anderson, Blake Burke, Bar Moses, and Rebecca O'Kill. We had such an amazing episode, and we are, again, as always, incredibly lucky that we get to be able to chat with so many amazing people, leaders, thought leaders, practitioners, boots on the ground, everybody who's out there. And again, thank you so much for everybody who is listening to us, because we keep doing this because we got so many cool people who listen to us, and it's always great to be at the conferences, people coming out to us, and it's so cool that you find value in everything that we're doing. So thank you.
Cheers to that. And I think that, it's always fun when we get to do these wrap-up episodes, because it's kind of the takeaways of the takeaways. We talk about, hey, here are these amazing people that we got to talk with this season, and here's what we learned, right? Because just like you all, we're trying to learn. The data space is constantly evolving, and we want to share what we're learning. And just before we start to jump into things, Juan, you drinking anything interesting? I know you're in Carmen La Playa right now, right?
I am, but so I'm here in Mexico, so it's been a whirlwind. we did LA, we did Las Vegas, we did London. In Austin, I was in DC. Now I'm in Las Vegas. All been.
You're going to change your address to be whatever the airplane model number is.
United 1K. So, anyways, I'm here, and I just had to. I made a margarita. This is a mezcal margarita, and I put a lot of mezcal into it, so it's a last one. So
awesome.
Cheers. How about you?
I'm drinking a Hemingway daiquiri, which is actually something I've had on the show before, but I try not to repeat, right? Unless it's an old-fashioned. Old-fashioned's the only one we're allowed to repeat. So I added a little bit of Luxardo maraschino liqueur. So it adds a little bit of a funky twist to it. So cheers to 5 years and 9 seasons.
There we go. Cheers. Cheers, everyone. Thank you so much. All right, so we did our analysis, and the honest no BS is that we did use ChatGPT to help us organize stuff, but these are still the takeaways of the takeaways. So just full transparency, honest no BSness. We took the takeaways that Tim and I wrote. So we are actually, whenever we do the episodes, people have seen us do this, we're typing everything. So we took all of that, put into ChatGPT, all these things, and they kind of just helped organize the topics. Then they come to stuff, and then we manually go in and kind of add things that we know are really important. So
I love that Juan is so honest that, like, anytime he uses AI, he's like, I used AI, it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, because there's a lot of people out there. that are really kind of against it and stuff. And I'm like, okay, well, if you're kind of against it, then that's another
Don't
discussion.
feel guilty about it, right? Lean into
But
it.
I'll be transparent about that stuff. So,
Yeah.
okay, let's just hit up topic number one that we
Yeah.
have.
First major theme, right?
Data work is a human discipline first. And I think this is really important because, again, not surprising. And I think if we go back to almost every episode, every season finale, we come up a lot with like, it's the people that's the center, the culture around that stuff.
And empathy and curiosity, all these people things, right?
So data is about people, and it's not just about those pipelines. So actually, we kicked off the entire season with Jordan Morrow, right? He's the guy who actually coins the whole data literacy and had a new book on business literacy. And he reminded us, you won't change people's mind with data points. It's with stories. And it's not just about telling that story, but about bringing a story to the truth. And what we need is that data needs that narrative and to be persuasive. And that's the creativity, right? And that's us people communicating with other people. And it's not just showing you a data point around that stuff, it's telling you that stories around that. But there's also, I think, the opportunity here for data folks is to really have that, to master the business 101 and start knowing kind of the terms like a bit of revenue, cash flow, right? There's all these kind of just standard terms that everybody in the data space should really know. And if you don't know, Jordan has a great book, The Business 101 for Data Professionals. And I think the other important one is there around networking. And it's really understanding who are your peers in the finance department, in the marketing department, right? What keeps the CFO at night? What keeps the CMO at night? And at the end of the day, again, this is not just about something we talk about. It's not just data literacy. It's really business literacy. And I love the quote that he brought up from Nelson Mandela. I never lose. I either win or I learn. That's a key thing. And by the way, this is not just Jordan will come up in different aspects here, but I think that's one of the important aspects that he came up when it comes to data work as kind of being human work first. Another guest that we had, Frances O'Rafferty. Big shout out to Frances. Love that she's been a listener and then she's been a guest, and we meet with her all the time when we hang out in London. And also, I think they got an award. Bazinga, their consultancy, they won an award at the British Data Awards. So congrats to y'all. We were talking about trust in data, and I like her definition of trust is a firm belief. It's the kind that you'd actually put in place for your colleagues, not just for some metric or some dashboard, right? So imagine, what do we mean by how do I trust the data? It's almost like if it were a person, if you'd fall back, would that person catch you? And that's the way you have to be thinking about data, how you're presenting trust in that data. How should data leaders think about trust? Well, quality tells you how good it is, and metadata tells you what it is in the semantics. The marketplace helps you find it easier and know it's certified, the policies about retention and life cycles. But the main one is, what do people think about it? The sentiment, the perception. That's the biggest factor on whether something is trusted or not. And what did your colleague tell you about those things? So again, the trust is really about the people, and not just about all the kind of the quantitative metrics that you'll put around the data and the data products and data sets. It's also what other people are saying about that. I don't know. What else do you have, Tim, on this topic?
Well, I think a few other guests that I think tie really well to this. Data is really a human first, focus and problem, right? Is so Winfried Etzel. So he's Dama Norway, has a podcast, amazing person, and has so many good insights around governance. And he said that elevated governance really is a human system, and it's in a socio-technical context, which I think really frames up that like governance is not actually just a technical activity. It's also not just a policy oriented activity. It's actually the fusion of sort of the social and the technical pieces coming together. And he reframed governance professionals really as personal trainers who are teaching people to follow the exercises that are needed in order to really do data properly, right? So I think that's a really cool analogy and a way to think about things. He said data governance is a human-based system by which data assets in this socio-technical system are directed, overseen, and by which the organization is held accountable for achieving their defined purpose. So we talked in that episode a lot about the definition of governance, and I think it's cool to check out if you're curious about the different ways to think of it. And he said that people working in data governance today, they're pioneers. They have the right mindset. It's their responsibility to share their way of thinking. How do I make others better with this? They need to help the organization get fit, right? That sort of personal trainer kind of approach. So I thought that was a great tie-in. Lindsay Murphy, head of data over at Hive, she talked about player coach data leaders and designing orgs from the top down, starting with strategy. And she really talked a lot about collaborative modeling, that like humans need to come together. It should not be like an individual sitting in the ivory tower trying to speculate on like how the organization is going to use data. It's a human endeavor. People have to come together. And she also talked specifically about a tool that I've started to learn a little bit more about because of that episode. And I feel like I've got more to learn, which is metrics trees, where stakeholders co-create the models and own the output. So cool idea. Definitely more to learn about there. Some other things she talked about was your first hire should be somebody who's, especially if you're like a startup, should be like somebody who is in the middle. Like they can kind of do the stuff that, at the ground level, but also they can do some leadership stuff as well. They can like become that player coach. They can grow with the organization. So we talked a little bit about like building teams, how to hire, that you got to push back and say no because, you can't just say yes to everything. So great episode talking about team dynamics and the human aspects around data. And then last but certainly not least on this topic, I would call out to Rebecca O'Kill, who is the Chief Data and Analytics Officer over at Axis Capital. That was actually one of our most recent episodes. We discussed a variety of different topics about like how to make sure that governance kind of gets off on the right foot. But we also talked about team structure and some of the human organizational aspects around how you make your data organization work well. And a big thing that she focused on was that governance should not be a back office activity. It should be a front office activity. The governance people should be embedded with the business, with the people doing analytics. So that way they're tying their activities to the business projects and the initiatives that are happening. And as you're trying to bring insights to light and as you're trying to drive better data-driven decisions, you're embedding governance directly into that. So this idea of embedded governance is really key to that. And when you do have that back office, so the back office is important, but it's kind of that blend between data architecture and data platform. So you got kind of the people thinking about how do we make this scalable and resilient. You've got the platform people who are more focused on delivery, right? How do we get there, fast, more of the efficiency perspective. And then also as part of that back office, she has data quality, right? And so they're really thinking about how do we create the environment and the trust to be able to really rely on our data for both data and AI use cases. What and why comes from the front office, the how comes from the back office. So great episode, just recent.
Just one call because it was recent when we did this. First of all, Rebecca we did a presentation with her at Gartner. And one of the things that a lot of people would come up to her afterwards, because she talked very briefly about the whole team structures and people were very interested. So the podcast episode that we did a couple of days afterwards, we went into super details about that. So this is an episode I highly recommend if you're starting up you're figuring out your team structure and stuff. Listen to it because this is one where it actually goes into a lot of the details. And I think very an opinionated approach and one that is being successful. So.
Yeah. So I think that kind of hits that topic. All right. Second topic?
Let's go. Second one.
All right. So second topic, second theme, that we have to go from tool obsession to value orientation, business value orientation. I think this is happening across the industry, which is a really good thing. I really feel like that the data industry from 5 years ago, 4 years ago, being like modern data stack and like it's all about the tools and how we glue them together, right? Going to like, no, it's all about the ROI. It's all about the impact that we're having. We should be measuring the impact we're having. Like, what a great place for the pendulum to swing. And in this season, I think we pushed a lot on the tendency to treat tech as a solution and really search for the problem, the real value that we need to be laser focused on, the business levers that can drive outcomes. So Blake Birch, who is actually here in Austin, we did an in-person episode with him, one of the sort of data community mavens here in town. I think he dissected this really perfectly. He said, teams often become quote, request ops. And they're just focused on handling the intake efficiently, but they really fail to generate impact, right? They're not as focused on the strategy and the bigger picture. So he said the fix is that you need to baseline your metrics and ask who's using the data, and make sure that every hour of data work is actually tied to a business outcome. And I think he was pretty bold in his statements in his episode where he said that like a lot of data teams are too big, which sounds like whoa, no. Like we want more investment, we want more people. But like think about it: if your team is not having the impact that it's supposed to be having, then it's too big. You have too many people, right? You could have less and be making the same impact. So obviously, we don't want to make our team smaller, but what we do want to do is increase the impact and tie it to the business value that we're having. What are you trying to do? Is it revenue? Is it conversion? Have the baseline around that. Are you moving things up and down? If you can't agree on what the metrics are, you shouldn't even do the project. So I think that's really a great perspective. And then Blake emphasized the need for two metrics: a primary business metric, and then also a technical data metric that can act as like a proxy or a lever. So great episode there with Burke on that. And then Lindsay Murphy, she talked about that strategic data teams can be leaner and more effective if they know when to push back, saying no when it's not part of the strategy. So I think that ties really well to Blake Birch's message as well. Data teams are one of the few parts of the company that really get to work with all parts of the company. So that's a cool thing about what we get to do. Again, using things like metrics trees can be really valuable. Collaborative data modeling, designing a dimensional model with business stakeholders that really helps you to address the questions that you need to answer, and building the model around that. So I think that's a valuable perspective there. Alexander Torrenegra, he is the CEO of Torre.ai, involved with what is it, the LATAM Shark group, right? And
Tank,
show, yeah, Shark Tank. He challenged us to think of governance as a competitive differentiator, not compliance overhead, but an innovation enabler. And he really made a case that governance is a way to future-proof our AI systems. And so thinking more strategically about the impact that governance can have, not just about kind of protection and defense, but actually as the driver of AI strategy and outcomes and impact for the organization, which I think we're all starting to get to now as data teams, is like, oh, governance is actually cool. Governance is a driver of AI. And I know we'll have more to talk about that in a moment. And then last, with tools, Bar Moses, CEO and founder over at Monte Carlo, data observability, and now also AI observability, pointed out the risk of shiny tools with no structure. And she said, quote, folks who ship quickly without observability will feel the impact. And what matters is whether you're solving the customer's problem. And so I think that's a great connection of, hey, it's not just about the tools, especially things like observability or cataloging, right? It can be very easy to become obsessed with like, well, we need to observe all the things, we need to catalog all the things, right? But the point is not to boil the ocean. The point is to, hey, what are we trying to do? Oh, we've got a customer 360 initiative. Okay, how do we tie what we're doing to make that more successful so that we can, improve our customer service and increase our customer NPS, right? The metrics and tying it back to that.
The for me, the most important takeaway here, and I love how Blake called it out really nicely, which was the request stops. And this is something that we see constantly. And I'm talking to all these people. If one, that you are stuck, that you're struggling to be truly a leader, a data leader, is if all you're doing is keeping up with that backlog of requests. And learning how to say no is super hard. And when to say no because you understand the business drivers, the business objectives, your KPIs, your OKRs, and that's what's really critical. And I think it's something that we have to say the obvious over and over again. We got to focus on the business value, but to be very practical, is like we need to understand what are those very specific objectives and how the work. We challenge our colleagues when they're asking for something, saying, tell them, if I do this work for you, how is that helping all of us achieve these business objectives? Like, we need to really take this whole notion of this request ops very seriously, and we have to stop doing that. And this is what I really love. At the end of the day, this is the trend. Is like, how do we make sure that we are aligning all that work is being that differentiator that's providing value, innovation, and being competitive so much that we can do more things faster, and provide that value. So definitely, again, we're repeating the same things over and over again, but we need to go do this, and
Yeah.
let's make sure we're actually
Because
providing
they're
that value.
valuable. That's why we have to repeat them, right? And like remember, like when the CDO, hell, the CEO, right? When they come and they talk to the data team, they're not going to ask you, so how well did you burn down your Jira backlog last week, right? That's not where we're having the impact.
Yeah. All right. Next theme I have on my list, the stuff that's very dear to my heart, modeling, semantics, knowledge, contracts, right? These are all strategic foundations. And I think there's something that we've been seeing this across the line over years, but now it's very, very, very well defined that this is something that many people need to go focus on, and they're starting to go do this. So Olga Mayandish had a fantastic episode where it's all about just starting from the basics of a business glossary. And this is an episode that I highly recommend everybody to start, because if you're just starting your data governance practice and you're starting to figure out how to go do all this business glossaries and stuff, this is the recipe of how to start from zero. And so, how do we start, right? Collect your terms, right? I mean, all the basic things, right? Business glossaries are the concepts, the terms of your business. Let's start collecting, making that list of all that stuff. You should make a 30-second sentence of why you actually need that business glossary. Don't make it with the obvious technical reasons, right? It needs to be, again, tied to why is this important to the business. It needs to be creative. It needs to be very specific for the enterprise. You want to be able to connect that with all the technical terms the technical metadata that you have. And by the way, if you're thinking about glossaries right now, that's the basics, and that's where you go start. Because right now, I mean, even the last couple of months, you see people now talking about knowledge graphs and ontologies, things very dear to my heart. But if you don't even have a business glossary in place, that's a place to go start off with, right? That means that you're early in your journey, and that's great. Let's set up those clear foundations. I like to talk, connecting back to the people, is like, you need to have friends to go do this. You need to be able to talk to the data architecture teams, because they're already implementing things in domains. Talk to your enterprise data modelers, right? There's all this middle level management who are trying to kind of figure out what they want to go achieve. Get their lingo. What are they trying to talk about? Analytics departments, those folks will be all doing this type of work and having these conversations using these words, right? Go department to department and figure out who's already kind of taking ownership around that data. And then once you put these terms inside of a business glossary, there should be somebody accountable. Like, if this is an important term, if this is an important acronym, variable, whatever, who's actually taking responsible? Why is this something important you want to keep track of? Like, what is the implications around this? And one of my favorite quotes is, don't think about perfection, think about progress. And then also on this topic, we had Patrick Cuba, which he is kind of one of the data vault experts. By the way, Pat, I will be in Australia end of July, and I'm meeting up with Patrick, and we're cooking up something during the Data Engineering Bites conference. So stay tuned to that. So really emphasize, data modeling is how we maximize business value in the most repeatable and direct way. And that's something that I tell people all the time, that the reason why you want to go invest in semantics is because it enables that reusability. So Data Vault, which is something that we don't hear often, at least I think more in the US, probably a little bit more in Europe. But what is Data Vault? It's the layer of bringing your business structures into a pattern-based model. You have your hubs, which are your business objects. Your satellites are the links to relationships. And then you may have different kind of vaults, which is going to keep track of all your history. At the end of the day, this also is kind of like a graph, right? You have your nodes, your concepts, your business objects, and your relationships, the links between them. Thinking about data vaults, about knowledge, about semantics from the beginning, this is what we should be doing, and iterate as we go. We talk about tech debt a lot around this thing. And here's the interesting: if fixing your systems costs more than the insight that they produce, things are probably upside down. And then kind of his lessons learned on kind of best practices is repeatable patterns on work. Go emphasizing that. You should not be doing data modeling alone. You need to have that enterprise input, accountability. Goes back to the topics that we just discussed, right? It's people work, right? Make sure you're going off on different departments. You need to have friends around this stuff, and actually set up office hours within your organization. People have these conversations. Then we also had a fantastic episode, also in person. Like Blake was in person at my house bar, and then John George Perron was also at my house and doing this in person. He introduced, I like this, PODM, product oriented data engineering management, and he made the case that data contracts is this big topic right now. It's really just metadata done right. So what is a data contract? It's agreements between a data producer and one or more data consumers. It's the link between the logical representation and that actual implementation of the data. What did we just discuss about with Olga about setting up a business glossary? Logical representation and then connecting with the data. See, all this stuff gets together, right? By the way, this is the really awesome, freaking amazing thing that we talk to all these people independently, and all this stuff gets connected. Right? Connections, relationships, right? Anyways, this is the knowledge first world, right? Data contracts are standardized. Data contracts are the source of truth of that metadata. So what's in that data contract? What's in that agreement? You have a schema, you have documentation, you have data quality rules, you have SLAs, you have the ownership, you have the business rules. And I like how he likened the data products and contracts to HTML and CSS, right? You have your content and you have your styling, you have your structure, and you have your constraints around that. So that was the whole semantics. I mean, so much amazing gold in here.
I know. Those are some really great episodes. And by the way, the Jean-Georges episode is one of my favorites. We had some wine, which was a bit unusual, but great. And that was I think our longest episode as well. It was like an hour and 30 minutes.
I think so. Yeah.
Gold there. The whole time, gold.
Yeah. And shout out George. Jenna says too. Patrick Cuba's and JGP's episodes were two of her favorites like that.
Oh, awesome! Thank you, Jenna.
And here we go. Yeah. Again, love data contracts are metadata right. Shami, we agree. I think that's actually a great way of like we let's put the whole all the buzzwords are at the end of the day. It's like let's get these freaking foundations done, right? And then when you realize that you're doing the right thing, then you just slap on, yeah, I'm doing data contracts, I'm doing data products, I'm doing all that stuff. We all know what is the right thing to go do. Let's just go freaking do that work.
Yep. Couldn't agree more.
It's my mescal now talking now. Go.
Two more observations on this, and then we'll move on to the fourth topic here, is that when we were talking with Patrick and we were talking about kind of like debt, right? We talked about like if you do modeling right and you approach it in a way that can evolve, then it's the analogy that I brought up and Patrick was like, yes, was it's like a city, right? And like sometimes when a city starts small, right? Like it's fine for you to kind of build roads wherever and to zone things wherever. But then as the city starts to get bigger, you're like, oh, shoot, like we probably shouldn't have factories next to schools, right? Like, okay, those should be zoned separately. And maybe there should be a highway running over here. And oh, shoot, it's too late. We didn't build the highway there. It's just a regular road, right? And so like good modeling helps you to be able to be more flexible to handle that evolution of the city as it's growing, which you're building a data city in your organization, right? So I thought that was a cool thing. And the second thing is just like, I don't know, call this like a dumb observation. Maybe this is kind of dumb, but like I had never thought that like a data contract could just be a schema. Like when he said that, I was like, wait a second.
It's a right? Starting point.
But he said, yeah, you could start with a schema if you want to. And like, maybe, of course you should do more, right?
Yeah.
But like a schema is technically an expectation that you're setting. You're saying, hey, when you query this data, like there's going to be this schema. And that is actually kind of the very beginning of a contract.
This reminds me that we also had an episode with Andrew Jones on data contracts. So we actually went into that early on. So that's by the way, 5 years. We should do the takeaways of 5 years. Anyways, I digress.
Maybe that's right,
you go.
All right, ready? Topic number 4. All right, reframing governance as a value enabler. Right, so this is kind of shifting defense to offense on governance. So governance got a rebrand this season, not just as gatekeeping, but helping with empowering trust, empowering experimentation, and empowering AI readiness. So Rebecca O'Kill, she led the charge when she talked about minimal valuable governance. So minimal valuable governance, similar to like an MVP, a minimum viable product, right? This is governance that's simple, it's use case aligned, and it's designed for minimum effort for maximum impact. And what does it include? Right? We talked about it. It includes clear definitions. It includes targeted audiences, and it includes low friction access and sufficient data quality. Honestly, that whole sentence right there, minimum valuable governance includes clear definitions, targeted audiences, low friction access, and sufficient data quality. That's
You
like the
know,
job description right there. That's it.
this actually aligns so much when you think about what a data product should be, even our data products ABCs. Like all this is aligning, right? The products, the governance, the contracts. It's like it's all the same shit. We're just kind of giving it different labels
Different
and
words, different personas, different
talking about
angles, same
semantics,
stuff.
right? Right, but
Hmm.
and it's not just a one or the other. Like here's a spectrum. You want to start, and there is not only one way of starting this. You got to start with what was the second topic that we discussed, with the freaking value of what it's going to go do, and then be able to go the first thing, talk to people about how this is going to be evolving. It's all connects. But all right, continue.
Yep. So minimum valuable governance. She explained also that you can leverage this to really embed governance into the business, right? So at first, she had implemented a separate governance team focused on doing its own thing, and the folks were, across the business were disinterested to engage. But instead, by bringing people to focus on governance within the data and insights pillar group and working directly with the business to do the translation work and to do the partnership work, then all of a sudden everything became unlocked and it became clear. And I think this is what's important is like until you work with your customers, right? You don't really know what is valuable. And this is same for product management, right? If a product manager is sitting in the corner just reading the internet trying to come up with an idea for what the right product is, they're going to fail. You have to go and talk to your customers. You have to talk to your users, and you have to partner with them. So I love the connections here between minimum viable products and minimum valuable governance. And to Juan's point, it all connects. It all comes back together. All right. Winfred Etzel, he said that embedding governance and culture, like safety signs, it's like safety signs in oil companies. Remember that today's governance practitioners are pioneers their mindset has to become distributed across teams. So if you can find a way to take that mindset and infuse it across the business, like that's going to be a really important and key part to driving
And I
value.
want to pick on this because I remember having this discussion. Like I worked at like even larger oil and gas companies, and something I learned is I'm at their office in Houston, and I'm just going down the stairs, and I'm just walking down the stairs like I always do. And then when I realized, somebody said, "Hey, you should hold the handrail." I'm like, I never hold the handrail when I'm doing that, but that's what they do because even if it's not going to happen probably on site inside the corporate headquarters, but it is the culture is like we never know. We need to have three things on earth always, and we need that's just part of the culture how they go do that. And that was a great reminder saying this is the way how we do our job. This is the way how we do our basic stuff, how we walk across the hallway. And I think that's the beauty of it, that it just becomes part of that culture. So I think that's what we need to start thinking about. It's like this is, and by the way, there's a reason for safety. There's things that we should be doing. So we should really think about how we embed governance inside of our day-to-day activities. Going back to what Rebecca was saying, the embedded governance, such that this is how we do our business because it's how we are amazing at our business and how we generate more value in our business and so forth. So I really love this.
Yep. And so another one of our guests that ties to this topic around reframing governance around value, Bar Moses pointed out that observability, guardrails, and governance are all converging, right? And with AI, as well as with analytics, as well as with data, right? It's true across all these things. The failure points are everywhere, right? It can be in the systems, it can be in the code, it can be in the sources, it can be in the semantics, right? Like there's all these places where failures can happen. And embedding governance means taking a holistic approach to thinking about both the physical and the logical and the conceptual pipelines, and making sure that that things aren't falling apart, right? That you're observing all these different aspects. And I think what's interesting about some of her talking points in her episode is that I think it all ties back to, like, when we talk about this whole AI readiness, like, what are we talking about when we talk about AI readiness? And I think the biggest point that we're talking about is that, like, hey, look, the foundations that make you successful with building a dashboard, the foundations that make you successful with data products, that make you successful with building out AI agents, they all share the same foundation, right? And I think that's the key point here, is that, like, maybe in the past we've been able to lean on humans to kind of make up for the gaps in this foundation. Well, as we shift to the robots, we really need to make sure we have that foundation in place. And governance is going to be the key to making that happen. And then last but not least, Jordan Morrow, he put it simply, quote, "Don't scare people away from data. Test it, monitor it, learn from it." And I think a key point that he made in his episode is he talked about, like, sometimes we don't create a friendly environment on the data side to really invite people to come and hang out in our land, right? Sometimes we want to be like, no, 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 that's not a data lake house. You have it all wrong. Or like, no, 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 that's not a data product. Or oh, no, 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 you're looking at the wrong data. Like, you're dumb. Like, don't make people feel dumb. Don't alienate people. Let data be a big tent where we can all come together and all get smarter.
And then there's that final topic, AI. It's changing the game, but it's only changing the game if you have the foundations that are right.
Mm-hmm.
And let me start off with Ugo Bone Anderson, who the foundations here are not just about the foundations of data and metadata, which is what we kind of think about it. It's about the foundations of how to get out of the POC, the proof of concept purgatory, which is, look, there's all this flashy demo. Oh, it hallucinated. How do I monitor this? Like, you have all this stuff, which is like, we do things in traditional, even software development. And I think part of the foundations is, how do we incorporate things that we do, kind of what we already know how to do in software, right? So what we see is that the excitement, kind of traditionally, excitement happens over time, but then it starts to wear off. And I think that's where we really need to start focusing on what he calls, it's not a test-driven development, it's an evaluation-driven development. And for example, he says, yes, LLMs should not always return the same answer. So ambiguity has to be part of your design. So we need to be able to build up minimal viable evaluations, right? And you should be able to go swap out LLMs, iterate rapidly. So his framework is about having this build, deploy, monitor, evaluate, and go back to build. That's something we're always constantly going to have. So what are you evaluating and how you're doing that? So on the what, you need to think about time and money. You think about accuracy, whatever those measurements of accuracy are going to be, and how to go do this is, you could even use LLMs as a judge, right? Aligning that with human evaluators. You may have some other approaches, like having some string fuzzy matching needs to be done. But at the end of the day, we need to start thinking about, you're building all these agents, these apps right now using AI. We need to start thinking about evaluation. And that is also part of our strong foundation around that. Besides all the things when it comes to having the strong metadata. I mean, even going back, like thinking about the contracts and stuff we were talking about with JGP is like, the source of truth of metadata. Like, that's what we need when it comes to AI. Like, we need to have that source of truth of metadata. We've talked about this so much, even the work that we've done in our research, like knowledge graphs is one of those key parts to be able to provide that foundations for metadata. Going back to observability, right? Bart Moses really called out, it's not just AI observability, it's data observability. It's both data and AI observability. And those foundations that we're doing for data should be applied for AI in both for structured and unstructured data. And then one of the things that I loved, we had Hala Nelson, we had this whole discussion about digital twins. And one of the things that I found really fascinating is that, and I think I posted about this on LinkedIn a couple of days ago, is that this concept of a digital twin is now coming back because we really want to be able to integrate our data and our metadata to be able to understand our businesses, our people, all the different objects, the things that are in our business, our processes. And I'd like her definition of a digital twin is virtually cloning all these objects, these processes, even the people, right? And to understand how they interact with and be able to go then modify things, augment this, right? That's the type of stuff we want to be able to go do with this digital twin. And if it's a process, all these things are connected. That's why knowledge graphs will be at the center of this. And I think when you start really connecting AI, when you start connecting our metadata, and you start connecting that just not just metadata from all our data and analytics assets, but can be any other item, any other thing, any other object within your organization. The processes that moves things around, and the people, because organizations are about people too. That is what we really want to go model represent. And from there, we can go start making changes and test things around that. I think that's what's really going to be the future of applying AI to the business, to be able to go do those what if scenarios. And I think that's what's really exciting, that when we set our foundations for metadata, we start bringing in all our processes, our people together, and start connecting this as a graph. This is where I now realize how companies can get so excited, because they're going to have that brain of the organization they can go talk to. And I'm just really excited about what's going to come in the next months and years with all this technology coming together.
I think that just for those who are listening, if you are looking for an episode that will expand your thinking a little bit on like where our space is going, and a little bit of a different take on what it's probably going to take to be AI ready, I really strongly suggest you check out Hala Nelson's episode on digital twins, because I think this is the future. I think that all organizations are going to shift from not just thinking about sort of data catalogs. They're going to be thinking about building their knowledge catalog, right? And not just a static or a passive knowledge catalog, but an active knowledge catalog. And an active knowledge catalog is the digital twin of your business, right? And I think that's where things are going. That's what AI is hungry for, is for that all that metadata about your business processes, about your business definitions, about what it is that people are doing, what it is that the machines are doing, what it is that, like, what are the outcomes, what are the results, like all of that's going to come together. And the next 5 years are going to play this out.
And I think again, we're using the word AI here a lot, which is really, we know that we're meaning Gen AI and LLMs. I think this applies in two parts. One is use it as a tool to be able to kind of scale the things that we have not been able to do before. Help us scale data modeling. And by the way, we're not saying it's going to do it for you, right? People are going to be involved there, but help us scale data modeling. Help us scale knowledge acquisition, catalog what's in people's heads. And we have the processes are in people's heads. The processes may be written down. Like, we have a way to be able to take all of that content, all of that text, all that transcripts, be able to codify that, put people in to make sure, yes, this is correct or not, and govern that thing. And then once we have this, use LLM themselves to help us figure out, okay, what should we go do? Again, humans in the loop around that. And I'm going to close. I want to close this segment on the AI part with what Alexander Torrenegra was saying. Is he emphasized, we talk about co-pilots, and he had his bold kind of position is like, it's not just co-pilots. Actually, we want to have the pilots. We have the full automations, which you would think is like, wait, do I want this AI thing to do it for me? But then I also, like, we started out this conversation about how much I've been traveling. You know what flies a plane? Not humans, it's the machines. Pilots are there still, right? But like takeoff and landing, most critical are humans doing that. But the other 13, 14 hours I'm on the plane, it's just the computer doing that stuff, because it has all the governance, it has all the guardrails, it knows if there's an issue, it pings the pilot, go come in, go deal with that. And I think that's what we're going to go, that's what we're heading towards. And imagine you have that entire brain of your organization where you can start kind of understanding what you know, understand what you don't know, be able to take decisions for you for the stuff that you can trust, pulling you in for the things that you want to be able, that you need to confirm and so forth. That's what I'm really excited about the future. So woof, that was a lot. Those are the five things. So we had people, we had focusing on business value, we had semantics as the foundations, governance as the enablement, and AI changing the game. If you got those foundations right, those were the things.
This was a pretty good season. We got some good stuff out of it. And again, like we said at the beginning, like we're learning, right? And we're trying to share what we learn with these amazing people we get to chat with. And I'm excited about what's next. So Juan, what do you think is coming around the corner here? Like, if you're gonna predict, the most important topics for season 10 and season 11? Like, what do you see coming around the corner here?
So a couple of things. One, we're going to dive really into agents. I think that's a topic. And what I really want, and this is a shout out for folks out there who want to be guests. So, by the way, Tim and I are taking a break. The podcast is not going away. Tim and I are going to come back. And we really want to kind of reach out to folks. We want to have a very diverse group of people and topics to be able to talk about, things to discuss. And I would really love to go chat more with folks, boots on the ground, who are actually deploying these types of systems. And the lessons learned, what they're going up to now. And I think I want to hear from people, what are the actual foundations that they put in place? I have examples like that. So I think that's one. So the foundations to get to AI agents, that's one aspect. The second thing that I'm really interested in learning about, which I predict we're going to go hear more, is where unstructured text documents is going to fall in. And I think that's still that the industry is figuring out. Like, you got data and analytics teams. Think about teams building your data warehouses, your fact and dimensional tables, and all the pipelines for that stuff, and your dashboards and all these things. Where is the text stuff going in? Right? Look at all the vendors. They're putting all these features around doing that. Are the folks all the data engineers dealing with that stuff too? Is governance dealing with that thing too? Or is there another team doing that, right? And I think a third part, which is kind of connected, is the connection between the people building these AI apps and agents and the teams building the foundations, right? How are they interacting together? Are these two different teams, and or are they underneath the same umbrella? Which goes back and kind of ties it all together, is like, how are the CDOs, the CIOs, the CTOs all working together around this? And I think also it's going to be different for organizations who are who have a DNA of building products and building systems and building software themselves, because the data they consume is the same data that they produce, versus other organizations where they just sell forks and knives, right? Whatever they sell, that they have data, but their essence is to sell forks and knives. So they consume data however it is, and they still want to be able to go take advantage of AI. But those are two different types of organizations. So when you talk about data products and data contracts, it's still two very different for those type of organizations. They still need to go deal with it, but they're in a different variety. So I think that is kind of what I'm looking forward to hearing more in the next season, in the next year. Anyways, I ranted already. How about you?
Love that. I think that's great. I'll add just two things, which is that in addition to everything you mentioned, I want to hear about success stories around implementing data product management, right? I think people are excited about that. I want to see who's doing it. Where is it succeeding? Where is it failing? I think we all kind of came out of data mesh excitement with like honing in on like, actually, I think we can get this data products thing right. So I want to learn more about who's doing it, where it's working. And I hope to learn over the next couple of seasons here a little bit more around some industry stories, like whether it's AI or whether it's data or whether it's governance and enablement. Like, what's going on in healthcare? Where are we making some success there, right? What's going on in finance, right? Where are we seeing success? What's going on in manufacturing? So I'm curious to see some industry angles. And so for some of you that are listening that, are data leaders in those respective industries, like reach out. We'd love to hear what's working and what's not working for your unique industry-oriented use cases.
Yeah, and for folks who are listening, like, please, like, reach out to us if you want to be on the podcast. Honest, no BS. We get a bunch of requests all the times. We'll get a bunch of requests from PR firms being on and from vendors. Like, we will respectively say we will add you to the list, but probably we don't want to have vendors on this. We really want to have people who are telling those stories around that. We may have some vendors because we actually know them and we trust them that they're not going to be salesy around that stuff. And actually, that's the honest, no BS around that. But please come out, and if you don't feel comfortable, still reach out, because we want to figure out how to go tell your story. Like, there's this great platform. We are extremely lucky and thankful for everybody who's listening. We have, I think, every single week we have over 2,000 people who are listening. Over 10,000 more than. So we have like 10,000 people every week. 10,000 people every month. By the way, there are 50 people listening to us right now live on Twitter, on X. I'm curious who you are all out. So, like, hello everybody on X. Like, I didn't think that was a
Hi,
thing.
people
But,
on X.
X, and I think there's less people around. Anyways, yeah, thank you all. Like, really, we're just really lucky, thankful for everybody who's listening. I don't know,
Yeah.
Tim. Five
Any
years.
final takeaways?
Oh, man, I'm just so grateful. I'm just so thankful. Okay, I do want to close with this one.
All right.
Thank you, Data.world. And it's not. This is not a goodbye or anything. It's just because, look, and a shout out here to our good friend and former colleague David Tishkart, who was at marketing at Data.world 5 years ago, who basically said, who supported us but thought that we were crazy. He's like, you guys want to do this every week? Like, are you guys
He's
crazy?
like, you're not going to do this every week.
Right? And we're like, I don't know, Tim and I, we wrote down 50 topics. Like, we can do this. And like for the first 30 weeks that we did this, it was just Tim and me just doing this. So I want to thank the early people like David Tishkart, who supported us. And then the entire Data.world team, the entire executive team, and I mean, now Matt Lessig, who's been really supporting us. Thank you for that.
Appreciate you, Matt. Shout out to Carly, one of our past producers.
Exactly. I was going to go like fast to Carly. I want to thank also, and our currently right now, like our entire marketing team supports us. So Alex Elliott, who is behind the scenes, who just does everything. Like Tim and I just click on a link, we just show up, press button, and then press end, and then we're done. And then suddenly this all shows up tomorrow, and I actually don't know how this works. So shout out to Alex and all, and former the producers who've done this stuff. And again, just shout out to Data.world, who really led us to do this, who supported us to be truly honest and no BS and non-salesy. As you all know, Data.world supports us. We pay our paycheck, but we are not here to go sell Data.world. You'll hear us. We just are very thankful that you all listen to us. And yeah, thank you to everybody. All right.
Well stated, Juan.
That's
all right.
Cheers,
Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you soon.
We'll have some surprise little episodes. By the way, Tim and I will be next week at Snowflake Summit.
Snowflake Summit?
Following week at Databricks, and we'll have
Summit.
an honest no BS dinner during Snowflake Summit and during Databricks. We got a couple of spots left. I think we're going to go do one. Don't quote me on this, but I don't know. But probably one doing in July during CDOIQ, another conference.
Boston, right?
Yes, for dinner, and I'm going to be in Melbourne and Sydney for Data Engineering Bites. So we'll see you all around on LinkedIn.